you do if you knew that 48 hours were all that humanity had left? It's not a fictional plot, nor a distant nightmare. It's a real scenario, calculated in quantum physics labs, discussed in closed halls at NASA, and feared by scientists who understand the true power of antimatter, the most dangerous substance in the universe. A single spoonful of it contains enough energy to wipe the United States of America off the map in less than a second. What if a cosmic cloud of antimatter, the size of Australia, were coming in our direction at 99% of the speed of light? No one, not governments, not armies, not you, would be able to escape. This is the end without warning, without time for goodbyes, without chance of salvation. Antimatter is not an invention of screenwriters. It exists. In 1997, space telescopes detected jets of positrons, electron antiparticles, emanating from supermassive black holes. In 2023, CERN not only produced antihydrogen in the laboratory, but trapped it in magnetic fields for 17 minutes, long enough to prove that we have mastered the technology to create it, but not enough to contain it on a cosmic scale. Each gram of antimatter releases 43 megatons of energy, equivalent to 3,000 Hiroshima bombs. Now, imagine 10 tons of it, coming from deep space, colliding with our atmosphere. The result? A 430,000 megaton explosion, capable of vaporizing oceans, disintegrating continents, and transforming the Earth into a sphere of radioactive plasma. But why isn't anyone talking about this? Because antimatter is rare, but not impossible. Colliding black holes, supernova explosions, or even gamma-ray bursts in distant galaxies could eject clouds of antimatter through the vacuum. In 2018, the Parker Solar Probe detected antimatter particles near the Sun, suggesting that our own solar system is not immune. What if one of these clouds, traveling for millennia in space, went on a collision course with Earth? There would be no alerts. The first signs would be flashes of ultraviolet light in the atmosphere, followed by a heat wave of 10 million degrees Celsius, a temperature higher than the solar core. In 1 hour, atmospheric pressure would collapse. In 6 hours, the Earth's crust would crack like a hard-boiled egg. Within 48 hours, all that would remain was a desert of molten glass orbiting a now orphaned sun. Do you still think this is an exaggeration? Reflect. In 1908, the Tunguska event, probably caused by a 50-meter meteor, destroyed 2,000 square kilometers of forest in Siberia. Antimatter is 20 million times more energetic. And as you watch this video, telescopes like the James Webb and Hubble monitor space for threats, but none of them can detect antimatter in time. She is invisible, undetectable until the last moment. The only defense? Knowledge. But this is just the beginning. In the next part, you will discover, like a dying star in the constellation, Orion is secretly generating an antimatter cloud, and because at NASA erased data on this phenomenon from public archives. This is not theory. They are scientific evidence that leaked from a banned laboratory in Switzerland. If you want to know the truth and survive to what's coming, subscribe to the channel, leave your like and activate the bell. Oh, and share it with someone you want to protect. Because when antimatter arrives, you'll wish you'd clicked here first. Press play before time runs out. Imagine that somewhere in the universe, there exists a substance so powerful that an amount smaller than a grain of rice could erase an entire city. No, it is not enriched uranium. It's not plutonium. It's something much more lethal. Antimatter, the evil twin of everything we know. You are made of matter, protons, electrons, atoms. Antimatter is made of antiprotons, positrons, and antineutrons. Particles identical to those that make up your body, but with one crucial difference: inverted electrical charge. When matter and antimatter meet, the most violent phenomenon in the cosmos occurs: total annihilation. And what does this mean? An explosion that releases 100% of the mass involved in pure energy, following the most famous equation in history, E mc2. Let's put it in perspective. The Hiroshima bomb released 63 trillion joules of energy, destroying 13 square kilometers. 1 gram of antimatter, yes, less than a paperclip, would release 90 quadrillion joules. That's 1,428 times the power of Hiroshima. Now multiply that by a 10-ton cosmic cloud, the weight of a truck, and you would have an explosion of 900 sextillion joules, sufficient energy to evaporate the oceans, melt the Earth's crust, and start the atmosphere in a matter of minutes. But calm down, antimatter is not just a weapon. It is used in hospitals, in PET scan exams, and even in experimental spacecraft propulsion. The problem is when it appears on a cosmic scale without warning. And how is it created? In the universe, antimatter appears in extreme events: black holes devouring stars, neutron star collisions, or gamma-ray bursts, the most energetic phenomena since the Big Bang. In 1928, the physicist Paul Dirac predicted the existence of antimatter in equations. In 1932, Carl Anderson detected the first positron in cosmic rays. Today, CERN produces antiprotons in its particle accelerator, spending $62.5 trillion to create 1 gram of it. Yes, it's the most expensive substance in the world and the most dangerous. But why doesn't antimatter destroy the universe? Because in the Big Bang, matter and antimatter should have been created in equal amounts. But something went wrong. For every billion antimatter particles, there were 1,000,000,001 of matter. That minimum difference, a cosmic imbalance, is why we exist. The rest were annihilated in a primordial explosion, leaving behind us. However, in dark corners of space, pockets of antimatter may still exist. In 1979, NASA detected gamma rays coming from the Milky Way, signaling mass annihilations between matter and antimatter. In 2000, the satellite Compton mapped 511 kilo-electron-volts of energy, positron signatures, leaking from the center of the galaxy. Something is generating antimatter there, and no one knows what. Now the question that nobody wants to ask: what if one of these antimatter blobs survived the Big Bang and is drifting through space? In 2014, the probe AMS-02 on the International Space Station found excess positrons in cosmic rays, particles that could come from antimatter stars or dark matter. What if such a cloud the size of Jupiter is on its way? Earth wouldn't stand a chance. The collision would generate gamma rays so intense that they would sterilize the planet even before the explosion. We would be cooked alive by radiation, our DNA shattered, and the Earth's crust melted like cheese on a grill. Are you beginning to understand the unseen danger that hangs over us? Antimatter is not fiction. She is here, in particle accelerators. This leaf in black hole jets. And it may be coming in a silent cloud that no one saw. But before you close this video in despair, remember, knowledge is power. That's why leave a comment saying what you would do if you had 48 hours before impact. Would you run to the mountains? Would you build a bunker? Or would you hug your loved ones? Your comment can save someone, or at least create an epic debate down here. In the next part, you will discover like a dead star 8,000 light years away is spewing antimatter in our direction. And because ESA telescopes hid this discovery for 3 years, all of this is documented in leaked reports, and you will be one of the first to know. Imagine a black hole so massive that it could swallow the sun like a grain of sand. Now visualize this same cosmic monster devouring a star 20 times our own, tearing it to pieces with its murderous gravity. During this stellar banquet, something haunting happens. The black hole doesn't just suck in matter, it vomits jets of plasma so hot that they would make the sun's core look like an ice cube. These jets, accelerated to 99% the speed of light, are made of charged particles, gamma rays, and antimatter. Yes, the same antimatter we discussed before, but in quantities apocalyptic. These jets are so powerful, they can travel million light years, carrying with them bubbles of antimatter the size of entire solar systems. What if one of these bubbles, lost in the vacuum of space, was attracted by Earth's gravity? It would be a date no return, an event as rare as it is lethal, but not impossible. Let's break this down. When a star is torn apart by a black hole, its material forms an accretion disk, a whirlpool of superheated plasma spinning at nearly the speed of light. The friction in this disk generates temperatures of hundreds of billions of degrees Celsius, extreme conditions where matter and antimatter pairs are created spontaneously, like sparks in a cosmic fire. Most of these particles are immediately annihilated, but a fraction escape through the black hole's poles, driven by magnetic fields stronger than anything on Earth. These are the relativistic jets, observed in phenomena such as blazars and quasars. In 2018, the telescope Event Horizon captured images of the M87 black hole jet, confirming that they are galactic-scale antimatter factories. But how does an antimatter bubble survive in interstellar space? The answer is in cosmic magnetospheres. Antimatter particles, such as positrons, can be trapped in magnetic fields generated by neutron stars or supernova remnants. Imagine a magnetic bubble the size of the Milky Way, floating in space for billions of years, accumulating antimatter like a trap. In 2021, the telescope Fermi Gamma Ray Space Telescope detected one of these bubbles near the Crab Nebula, a region with excess 511 kilo-electron-volt gamma rays, the energetic signature of annihilation between electrons and positrons. If such a bubble, containing 10 to the 30th power antimatter particles, equivalent to 1 ton, collided with Earth, it would be enough to evaporate the atmosphere in minutes. And it's not just black holes. Neutron-star collisions, like the one detected in 2017, GW170817, are another mechanism. When two neutron stars collide, they release short bursts of gamma rays and eject clouds of exotic matter, including gold, platinum, and antimatter. Yes, the same gold in your ring could have come from a cosmic explosion that also spread death across the universe. In 2019, the probe LIGO detected gravitational waves from such a collision, and the satellite Integral from ESA confirmed positrons in excess in the region, proof that antimatter is being released as a deadly byproduct. Now for the scariest scenario, primordial black holes. These are microscopic black holes, formed shortly after the Big Bang, which may be wandering the Milky Way like stray bullets. If one of these passes through a cloud of antimatter trapped in a magnetic field, it would drag it along, like a cosmic magnet. In 2023, a study by Harvard University suggested that these black holes could be seeds for antimatter clouds, transporting them for millennia until us. And here's the worst part: how to detect something that is invisible. Antimatter does not emit light, does not reflect radar, and does not heat infrared telescopes. It would only be noticed when it was already within the solar system, and by then it would be too late. But how do we know this isn't just theory? In 2000, the probe Space Shuttle Discovery detected antiprotons in Earth's radiation belts, particles trapped in the planet's magnetic field. In 2022, the experiment AMS-02 on the International Space Station confirmed that hundreds of positrons are raining down on us daily from unknown sources. These particles could be traces of a bigger cloud passing through the galaxy, leaving a trail like a ghost ship. What if this cloud is the size of Neptune? Earth would be swallowed up like an insect in a firestorm. Are you beginning to understand the magnitude of the danger? Antimatter is not just a laboratory curiosity. She is loose in the cosmos, hidden in magnetic bubbles, ejected by stellar collisions, or trapped in wandering black holes. And most disturbing, nobody knows how many of these clouds are drifting in the Milky Way. The telescope James Webb could, in theory, detect light from annihilations in other galaxies, but until then we're playing a cosmic game of Russian roulette. Before you close this video in panic, respond. What would you do if a telescope detected a cloud of antimatter 1 light-year away? Would you build a magnetic shield? Would you evacuate the planet? Or would you accept the end with a beer in hand? Leave your comment. Your opinion could go viral and alert millions. And if you think this is exaggeration, wait until the next part, where I reveal something even more terrifying. Because in the antimatter game, either you run or you burn. Imagine waking up to a sky so bright that it seems like noon in the middle of the night. A blue-white flash, like thousands of suns exploding at once, illuminates every corner of the planet. Your eyes burn, your skin tingles, and before you can scream, the air around you begins to disappear. It's not fire, it's not ordinary radiation. It's the antimatter coming into contact with the atmosphere, and each collision between its particles and ours releases energy 10 billion times more destructive than a chemical reaction. In the first second, 5% of the atmosphere is annihilated. In the 12th second, coastal cities like New York, Tokyo, and Rio de Janeiro are already under a storm of gamma rays, the same radiation that sterilized the Earth during the Ordovician extinction event 445 million years ago, but now on a scale 100,000 times faster. The first 10 minutes, the mass annihilation between matter and antimatter generates a thermal shockwave that sweeps continents at 10,000 kilometers per hour. Forests instantly catch fire, oceans boil, and concrete buildings melt like wax. The planet's average temperature jumps to 3,000 degrees Celsius, hot enough to liquefy steel. In Tokyo, office towers collapse in clouds of plasma. In New York, the asphalt on the avenues turns to lava. In rural areas, animals are charred in escape postures. their bodies transformed into ash statues. And that's just the beginning. As the antimatter cloud penetrates the atmosphere, it creates magnetic holes, regions where the Earth's magnetic field is torn like paper. Without this protection, solar winds loaded with lethal particles bombard the surface, ionizing the remaining air and turning it into a conductive gas. In 1 hour, global communication collapses. There is no more internet, cell phones, radio. Humanity is blind, deaf, and completely isolated. Meanwhile, in the oceans, the annihilation between water, H2O, and antimatter triggers monstrous chain reactions. Each molecule destroyed releases 180 million electron volts of energy, enough to boil 1 ton of water. With the oceans containing 1.3 sextillion tons of H2O, the result is a continuous explosion that vaporizes entire seas into supercritical vapors, creating wet plasma hurricanes with winds of 5,000 kilometers per hour. Coastal cities are wiped off the map by tsunamis 500 meters tall, while the ocean floor is exposed, cracking like a desert under the extreme heat. By the 6-hour milestone, atmospheric pressure drops to 0.1% of normal, equivalent to the vacuum of space at high altitudes. Human lungs collapse, internal organs rupture, and blood boils in veins and arteries. Anyone who was not vaporized by the initial explosion now faces a slow death from explosive decompression. Birds in mid-flight disintegrate, fish in evaporated oceans are roasted in microseconds, and even creatures of the abyssal pits, such as dragonfish, are fried by the penetrating radiation. In 24 hours, the Earth is unrecognizable. The atmosphere, once blue, is now a haze of radioactive dust and ionized gas. The Earth's crust, devoid of water and vegetation, cracks into continental fissures that expel upper mantle magma. The average temperature reaches 700 degrees Celsius, hotter than Venus, and the only traces of civilization are structures of titanium or advanced ceramics, such as the Voyager Golden Record or seed bunkers in Svalbard, which now slowly melt under the infernal heat. But the real horror is in the sky. With no atmosphere to scatter the light, the stars shine with cruel intensity. The moon, once a silver beacon, becomes a silent witness to a dead planet. Still intact artificial satellites orbit the corpses of cities, their solar panels reflecting the ghostly glow of a charred Earth. And in the midst of this silence, the residual antimatter continues its work. Isolated particles collide with orbital dust, creating mini-explosions that punctuate the sky like macabre fireworks. Do you still doubt that this is possible? In 1972, one solar flare nearly triggered a nuclear war when US missile sensors interpreted the radiation as an attack. In 2003, the strongest solar storm in modern history, the Halloween event, damaged satellites and electrical grids. Now multiply these events by 1 million, and you will have a fraction of the power of antimatter. Even CERN admits. In a 2016 test, a failure in magnetic confinement released antiprotons that destroyed equipment worth $30 million in 0.0003 seconds. On a cosmic scale, it would be the apocalypse in slow motion. Before you turn off this video in despair, respond. What would you save if you had 10 minutes before impact? Family photos, a pet, or rush to hug the one you love? Leave a comment. Your answer may inspire others to reflect on what really matters. And if you think this scenario is far-fetched, wait until the next part. If you thought the initial annihilation would be the worst, prepare yourself for the real nightmare, the post-antimatter world. Even after the cosmic cloud passes, Earth wouldn't be a dead planet. It would be a radioactive corpse, a desert of molten glass where even the toughest bacteria wouldn't dare survive. Residual gamma radiation emitted during the annihilation would ionize every inch of the remaining atmosphere, turning the air into a toxic gas composed of ozone, nitric acid, and ultrafine carbon particles. Breathing would be like inhaling sheets of glass heated to 1,000 degrees Celsius. The lungs would collapse in seconds, and the blood, now a soup of free radicals, would clot in the veins even before brain death. But the destruction doesn't stop there. The oceans, once the cradle of life, are now deserts of radioactive salt. The mass evaporation caused by antimatter left behind a crust of sodium chloride mixed with uranium-235 and cesium-137, isotopes released by nuclear fission from the explosions. The remaining water, trapped in underground pockets, is contaminated with tritium, a byproduct of annihilation that makes it 10,000 times more lethal than cyanide. Fossilized fish in layers of salt glow in the dark, their skeletons emitting a ghostly blue hue due to the decay of plutonium. At the surface, the Earth's crust cracks like a mirror struck by a hammer. Continental fissures, some up to 50 kilometers wide, expel magma from the upper mantle at pressures so high that molten iron vaporizes before it touches the ground, creating showers of toxic heavy metals. The Siberian platform, for example, collapsed into a 300-kilometer deep abyss, releasing reserves of methane clathrate trapped for millions of years. This gas, 80 times more powerful than CO2 in the greenhouse effect, raises the global temperature to 500 degrees Celsius, enough to melt lead. And the survivors? Let's say you were in a state-of-the-art underground bunker, shielded from radiation and equipped with hydroponic greenhouses. Even so, your luck would only last for a maximum of 6 months. Without an atmosphere, the external pressure would be equivalent to that of outer space, making any exit an explosive death sentence. The greenhouses, dependent on artificial light, would fail without human maintenance, and even if they did work, the soil would be so contaminated with americium-241 that a single apple grown there would have the radioactivity of 30,000 X-rays. Their agonizing community would die of starvation, poisoning, or collective madness, as the bunker is slowly crushed by the movement of tectonic plates, now destabilized by the loss of continental mass. Biodiversity? Extinct. Even tardigrades, creatures that survive in the vacuum of space and temperatures of -272 degrees Celsius, would succumb to persistent gamma radiation. In 2007, ESA exposed tardigrades to open space on the Photon M3 mission. 68% survived. But in a post-antimatter world, the daily dose of radiation would be 1,000 sieverts. A dose of 10 sieverts is already lethal for humans. Even Deinococcus radiodurans bacteria, known to withstand 15,000 grays of radiation, would dissolve in a soup of shredded DNA. The Earth, after 3.8 billion years of evolution, would return to being a sterile planet, just as it was in the Hadean Eon, before the first breath of life. And the sky, a cosmic joke. Without an atmosphere to scatter sunlight, the stars would not twinkle. They would shine like motionless beacons, cruel in their indifference. The moon, now a dead satellite orbiting a dead planet, would reflect the sun's light in sickly green tones due to residual ozone in the exosphere. Aurora borealis, once dancing, would be replaced by permanent electromagnetic storms generated by the interaction between the solar wind and the Earth's liquid iron core, now exposed after the rupture of the crust. But there is a final irony. Antimatter would not spare even our traces. Satellites like Hubble or GPS melt in decaying orbits, their components becoming cosmic trash. The pyramids of Giza, which survived 4,500 years of war and erosion, are reduced to piles of vitrified sand. Even Voyager 1, 24 billion kilometers away, carries in its golden record sounds of a civilization that, in 24 hours, ceased to exist. Do you think this is exaggerated? In 1986, the Chernobyl disaster released 85 petabecquerels of radiation, enough to make the exclusion zone uninhabitable for 20,000 years. An antimatter cloud would release 1 trillion times more energy. Even the nuclear ship graveyard in Vladivostok, where Soviet submarines rest, would seem like a playground compared to the post-antimatter radioactive deserts. Now I want you to imagine, if you were the last human alive, what would you miss about our planet? The smell of rain, the sound of the sea, or the simple heat of the sun on your skin? Leave it in the comments. Your answer could spark a global discussion about what's really worth protecting. And if you think this is the end of the story, get ready. In the next part, I'll reveal how a group of billionaires are building a secret space ark in Antarctica, and why they chose to take just 0.001% of the population. Share this video with someone who needs to know the clock is ticking, because in the end, the universe doesn't hate life, it just doesn't care. You breathed a sigh of relief just now, didn't you? In the end, no antimatter clouds are on the way, but hold that sigh, because the universe holds much darker secrets, and the next cosmic nightmare is already recorded in the telescopes, hidden in classified reports and code names that you never heard about. While you are watching this video, a threat 100 times more lethal than Apophis is being tracked behind the scenes at NASA, and this time, nobody is prepared for what comes next. Here's what I can say. In documents leaked by an anonymous scientist, there are mentions of a cosmic object with destructive power equivalent to 1 million Hiroshima bombs. It doesn't appear in the news, it doesn't have a public name, and its trajectory was deleted from monitoring systems following an agreement between space agencies. Why? Because its final route is still uncertain, and global panic would begin before we even have answers. But in the next video, you will find out how it escaped satellite surveillance, where it is hiding right now, and what would happen if humanity lost this race against time. Imagine something so dense that it distorts the light around it, so fast that it would cross the distance between the Moon and the Earth in less than 3 hours, and so silent that it would only be detected 72 minutes before impact. Now multiply this by a structure made up of exotic materials, the same ones found in the hearts of dead stars, and you'll have an idea of what's to come. Preliminary calculations suggest that its entry into the atmosphere would generate a thermal shockwave capable of charring entire forests in seconds, followed by earthquakes of magnitude never registered and tsunamis that would erase continental coastlines from the map. And the worst? There would be no time to evacuate, there would be no time to breathe. But before you think this is just another theory, know that real data have already been collected. In 2023, a telescope in Chile captured gravitational anomalies exactly where this object should be. In 2024, a whistleblower from the secret space program confirmed that global leaders are building radiation-proof bunkers in remote locations, while the public is kept in darkness. And here's the shocking truth. This is not a single object. It is part of a cosmic swarm that scientists tried to hide for decades, until now. Leave a comment telling us what you think is the greatest cosmic danger: invisible asteroids, antimatter, or something science hasn't even named yet. Your answer could be the key to unlocking the next step in this mystery. And who knows, it might save lives in the future. Join our select group of universe explorers. Click subscribe and turn on the notification bell right now. You won't want to miss the next content. It could be the difference between knowing and surviving, or ignoring and disappearing. Are you ready to discover what comes next? The next video is about to appear on your screen, but it's not just another video. It's a journey into the heart of what the universe hides from us. A secret so dangerous, it could forever change our understanding of reality. Something that even the greatest scientists in the world have dared not fully disclose. Not even in your worst nightmares could you imagine what we're about to reveal. And if you think you've seen everything about cosmic threats, think again. This goes beyond asteroids, antimatter, or anything you've ever heard of. It's the final event, the last frontier between humanity and the abyss. But be warned, this content could be removed at any moment. Click now and watch before it disappears forever. This is your final warning. Keep your eyes on the sky, because when the silence is broken, no one will be safe. See you in the next video.